the coronavirus is a novel virus that appeared. It appeared apparently in Wuhan in China, but it could have appeared almost anywhere in the world. A novel virus is something that can appear. And the reaction of the World Health Organization was absolutely correct, to warn that a new virus had appeared, to warn that there was no obvious vaccination or cure for it. The only way was to prevent it spreading by a process of testing, tracing, and social isolation if necessary. And some countries followed the World Health Organization advice correctly, others didn't. And others, by not following it, have paid the price. And so the huge number of deaths in the United States, the very large number of deaths here, are as a result of the inaction of their respective governments in following the World Health Organization advice. And the Trump administration has decided to withdraw from the World Health Organization altogether, which is outrageous and disgraceful, and one hopes that it'll take so long to withdraw, because I would imagine it has to go through the Senate, that it will be in time to see the end of the Trump administration before the withdrawal actually takes place. But it is a serious threat. And whilst the British government has not withdrawn, and indeed did donate a not very large sum of money to the World Health Organization, partly to make up for the cut in US funding, it has nevertheless said that it will remain in membership, which is good. But there is a pressure on the Tory benches to get rid of the World Health Organization altogether and replace it with something else. In the World Health Organization is its determination for there to be free healthcare at the point of need, as we have here through the National Health Service, whereas there are other institutions like the International Monetary Fund, the World Bank, and many countries' aid packages which are predicated around insurance-based health systems, employer-based health systems, or private health systems altogether. So surely the message from the coronavirus is that the health inequality of the planet makes everybody vulnerable, but as with most things, disproportionately affects the poorest and most vulnerable within our society. The death rates are therefore highest amongst the poorest people, and the death rates are significantly higher amongst the Black and minority ethnic communities in Western Europe and in the United States. And so a post-corona world has to address the issues of health inequalities across the world. We're actually only as safe as the nearest person is who's got no health insurance if you happen to live in the United States, as Bernie Sanders has repeatedly pointed out. So the issues post-corona are going to be about health, are going to be about levels of global poverty which are rising now because of the economic cutbacks all around the world, the loss of jobs, and when the furloughing comes to an end in Britain, I suspect many companies will see that as an opportunity to shed staff rather than re-employ them. And the debate is going to be very strongly economic, and I'll come back to that in a moment. But there are two other big factors in all this. One is environment, and the other is human rights. Environmental degradation around the world is massive, and levels of air pollution are appalling, and the death rate because of breathing foul air, be it in Glasgow, Birmingham, London, Delhi, or Beijing, is very high, particularly in New Delhi, but also in many Chinese cities. And the effect of lockdown, the dealing with corona crisis, has been that for some people, for the first time in their lives, they've managed to breathe relatively clean air. Well, if it's possible during a lockdown, it's possible at all other times. Let's not lose the environmental issues that have been exposed in this. Let's put them center stage, and an economic recovery should be based on a green industrial revolution, not a return to high levels of pollution and inequality and poverty from that. And the other big issue is, of course, human rights and denial of human rights around the world to many people. And human rights are collective as well as individual, as the 1948 Universal Declaration points out. They do include the right to housing, the right to health, the right to education, and the right to eat. And one of my last acts as leader was to propose an amendment to a government statement in the House of Commons, which said that henceforth the right to eat in Britain should be a fundamental right guaranteed by the government, not through food banks, but through decent pay and conditions that people can afford to eat. But the other negative of the corona crisis has been obviously the horrific death rate. But the plus has been the growth of that sense of community and the desire of so many people to do something for the benefit of others. And I don't think we should forget or lose that. So the big debate is going to be on the economy. After the financial crisis of 2008, there were cutbacks. There was a slashing of expenditure in Britain particularly, but in the USA and all other countries, to some extent on health, on education, on housing, and on local services. That can't happen this time. There's got to be an investment-led economy, an investment-led resolution to this crisis. And those people that think they can hide away in a tax haven and offer their island up for collateral in return for government aid need to think again. They should be paying their tax in the first place. We shouldn't be thanking people for donations during this crisis. We should be asking them that they should have paid their tax in the first place instead of living in a tax haven and registering their profits there as well. Antonio Guterres made a very important call as the corona crisis began to develop in January, and that was there should be a global ceasefire in all conflicts in order to deal with COVID. If you can have a ceasefire dealing with COVID, of course you can have a ceasefire on other occasions as well. And there's been some response to that. I wouldn't say it's 100%, nowhere near that, but there has been some response to that. The conflicts around the world are fueled by the arms trade, are fueled by injustice, by poverty, by inequality, by abuse of human rights. And we have to be the voice for peace. We have to be the voice to bring about a ceasefire in Yemen. We have to be the voice that brings about peace. The Nuclear Non-Proliferation Treaty Review Conference, which should have been held in New York in April and May, and I indeed was due to be there for it, was obviously cancelled and will now be held next year. We should see that as an opportunity, not a problem, an opportunity to build those alliances, and in Britain, through the Strategic Defence and Security Review, build those alliances about what a different economic and security policy can look like. What is real security? Real security, surely, is somewhere to live, is enough to eat, is education, is health. It is all those fundamentals, the right to breathe clean air, the right to live in a sustainable environment. That's what real security is about. Real security doesn't come from an ever-expanding arms race in which we're all made more dangerous and more at risk as a result of it. The killing that happened in Minnesota was abominable by any standards. Somebody killed in front of the cameras, a black man with a white person putting his knee to his throat and deliberately asphyxiating him, killing him. And that's resulted in massive demonstrations, not just in the USA, but all around the world. They've seen the injustice, they've seen the inequality before their very eyes, before the cameras. There can be no excuse. Everyone knows what happened. Therefore, there's got to be a lot of changes. You can no longer consign a whole proportion of the population to poverty, to inequality, to shorter life expectancy because they're black. You have to recognize the colonial legacy, the legacy of slavery, and the legacy of all of those horrors of history as a way of our understanding how we create that pathway to the future.